It's time for the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, a podcast so good it doesn't need a name. So without any further ado, here's your host, JD. Take it away, Johnny.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 26 of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast. I'm your host, JD, aka Gaddick, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about crafting. This week I posted 2 threads to the SWTOR subreddit involving crafting and how I think it's broken, and asking you to give me ideas for how you would like to see it fixed. So we'll be discussing the improvement of crafting, my ideas and your ideas. We'll also be talking about the upcoming and recently spoiled Life Day event, and how I kind of see it as the wowification of SWTOR. All this an idea fresh off my personal wall of crazy, so let's force leap right in.
Thread 2, I've got a topic coming in hot requesting clearance to engage.
Lock as foils and attack positions. You are cleared to discuss.
So let's talk about crafting for a while. I'm of the belief that crafting in your general, hotkey-based MMOs, your WoWs, your Rifts, your SWTORs, is inherently broken. SWTOR in particular has a broken crafting system in my opinion, and this is for a number of reasons on top of the basic, crafting systems in MMOs are inherently broken. And why are they inherently broken? Well, crafting is a very simple example of economics. And economics is based in scarcity. Now, what is scarcity? Scarcity is the lack of abundance of resources. If everyone in the world had everything they ever wanted, there would be no reason for money because you'd have everything you wanted. If everyone could get a yacht, if everyone could have a big screen TV, if everyone could even get all the food that they could ever desire, then there'd be no reason to have money. You have everything you desire, so you don't need an economy. In SWTOR, and in MMOs in general, there is no such thing as scarcity. The only resource that you can limit is time. Because if you just do it by basic resources, over time, you'll find out players have infinite time, and there will be an abundance of those resources. This is why when a new expansion comes out, or an MMO just starts, you'll see the economy is really dynamic and interesting. And that's when I feel like the economy in MMOs is at its best, and when crafting in MMOs is at its best. When players are just getting into something new, just figuring out what's good, what's bad, just starting to gather those rare resources, things like that. A perfect example of this is towards the end of my stint in WoW was the release of Cataclysm. And in Cataclysm they had the resource Chaos Orbs, which you can only get in hard mode 5-mans, the heroic dungeons. And these were good because they were limited by time. Dungeons at that point took a while to complete. You can get through it with a really good group maybe in an hour in most hard mode dungeons. So that's not that fast. That's not like your typical 5-man dungeon run. And they were also limited by the fact that those dungeons were hard, and a lot of groups were incapable of doing the content. So this caused the Chaos Orb market to be incredibly volatile, and also incredibly lucrative and interesting. Players who could get the Chaos Orbs had lots of different options to use those Chaos Orbs in. You could use it to craft your intra-rating gear. You could use it to craft your very good enchants. The best enchants required some of them. So a lot of that stuff was very interesting. And this was one of the things, when Cataclysm released, it was actually a great expansion. The things they did towards the end of the expansion are what caused me to leave, but I thought they did some very good things and kept the economy pretty good for a while because they did have some amount of scarcity, because they limited their resources to, disenchanting your rating epics would lead to the mats you need for your raid level gear. But over time, you find out that players do have infinite time. There will be an overabundance of the resources required to make pretty much everything. Now, when you do lock it behind something like raiding or doing super high-end PvP, then you do artificially increase the scarcity of items. When you have like the daily lockouts on making certain rare components, you do artificially boost the economy and boost the scarcity of items. So that does it for a little while, but over time, again, players in MMOs will find a way to make what they need to make. So that's one problem with crafting. Now, crafting in SWTOR has the added problem of the fact that there really is no reason for a character to have, say, Artifice. Artifice is probably the worst profession in the game right now, I would say. Usually considered the best are Cybertech and Biochem because of the utility of reusables and the grenades. But even those, you can just buy those on the GTN, so there really isn't all that much incentive for you to be any profession, other than making some money, which is also not the most lucrative business because there is that limitation on scarcity of items. It was a little bit better when you could craft the endgame gear, the mods, the enhancements, the armoring, so the people that could craft those were a little bit better, but there were some groups that couldn't craft them at all. And at least right now, most items can be made just straight from items that you get from just sending your companions out on gifts, which is only limited on missions, which is only limited by time. And as I just said, you'll find that MMOers do have infinite time. So eventually things will get dirt cheap and everything will become trivial. I'm not saying that players cannot play the GTN. They absolutely can. I've made a lot of money, and I know a lot of people that have made a ton more money than even I have on the GTN. So there's a problem with scarcity in MMOs. There's no real reason to have a crafting profession, especially one over the other. If you have one, you can usually find something that you can sell on that profession. So if you're not getting reusables, you're selling something. So the reusables are really only there to save you money, and if crafting professions are there to make you money, which is pretty much what you do with the other ones, then there really is no difference than having, just everyone take slicing and make their money that way. I know people wouldn't do that, but it's basically that. The crafting missions is there to give you X amount of money per crafting mission that you send out. And the variations on that can be great from people who know how to play the GTN and people who don't. But it's really not an interesting system. No one is creating anything cool and worthwhile. They're just creating the things that people want, like your augments, like your potions, like your adrenals, things like that, your grenades. And that's basically it. So if I were to just give you a stipend of those items, we would all end up in the same place. It wouldn't be that much different if every week you just got your stipend of adrenals and potions and grenades and just a little bit of money. You would have the ends. You'd have the very upper class and the very lower class coming closer to the middle, but for the average player that would probably end up very similar. So I feel like there needs to be more incentive and more uniqueness to each crafting profession to really make the system work. And I also think there needs to be some way to limit the system. If you're going to make everyone unique, you need to have some kind of limiting factor so you're not just splitting everyone up into all the different crafting professions and making all of them the same. So I posted on Reddit, and I wanted to hear from you guys. I've seen this come up in several places recently, and usually it boils down to crafting is useless, dead, stupid, etc. Bioware needs to fix it. I'm of the opinion that crafting in MMOs is inherently broken, and while saying something is busted is easy, figuring out why and how to fix it is not. I want to hear from you. How would you fix crafting in SWTOR? I'll cover this topic in my next SWTOR Weekly Digest. And I'm going to read just a couple of the top answers, because I think a lot of them are very good. So, BSTR413 from the Jung Moss server gives a bullet pointed list. He says, better filters, something like the GTN interface. I do not want to have to scroll down such a long time when I'm looking for a level 34 aim earpiece to make for an alt. That I agree with. There are a lot of UI issues with the SWTOR interface system that a lot of other MMOs have smoothed out. You know, you can search for things, you can hide things. Bioware does none of that, and it is very annoying. I have a few times made, you know, the wrong level potion or the wrong level item that I'm trying to make, and it's kind of annoying. He goes on to say, all custom armor designed by Synthweaving and ArmorMech need to be adaptive armor, or level requirement reduced to 10. That way you can provide an alternative to cartel market armor. I like that idea too. The cartel market is a big issue when it comes to the crafting system. I will go on to talk more about that in the next post that I talk about. But yes, I think it would be very cool if the people that make the armor shells made it level 10 level. Same thing with Artifice, the crystals should be level 10. All color crystals should be leveled down to level 10 at this point. I think that's a big thing, and I think that eventually, maybe in the next expansion, we will see color crystals stripped of their stats, and stats will just be rolled into your weapons and shields. I think that's coming. If they've talked about that in the past, and I think going forward, that's kind of the right way to go. Crits on armor need to provide MK9 augmentation slots. I thought it already did. The crits on the armor need to provide the slots. I'm pretty sure if you crit on an armor piece, it does give you the MK9 slot. So I don't know about that. Legacy banks, this was another one, and I think it would be really cool if there were legacy banks. It would definitely make it very easy to give items and different crafting materials, because a big thing with crafting now that everyone has a lot of alts is that you want to be sending your crafting mats from one character to the other. And he finishes with a way to craft other alt companions without needing to log into them. So this is basically the login dance that everyone does when you have a lot of alts. You have to log into all your different characters to send them out on missions. I also have an idea for this that I will cover in the next thread as well. So moving right along here, Von Boomslang says the ability to hide recipes I want hidden, the ability to display hidden recipes without hiding them, the ability to filter recipes by name, stacking and reverse engineering chance. I think that's a big thing. Reverse engineering is a big pain if you want to do it. If you want to get your 10 slots for the augmentation kits, so if you want to get 9 of the MK9 components to make your kit, that takes you probably about a minute just to do 10 of them. That's to do one, and then you have to send out a mission on 20 minutes. 20 plus minutes, actually. So it is a big time sink, especially if you're making them bulk and that's your item that you want to sell. So that's just an annoying thing. If they can reduce that down to maybe 2 seconds even, that would cut into some of the time. I know that part of the justification is that they don't want you reverse engineering something you didn't mean to, so you have a way to stop it. But if you could just stack things and reverse engineer the whole thing, and I know you can do that with biochem stuff because it is stackable, but with armor it's not. So maybe if you could have a multi-select to reverse engineer a whole slew of things at once, that would be great. So a big thing is obviously you want better UIs. Let's go here to the Geno Haradan. Off the top of my head, Bioware hasn't expanded the crafting tiers lately, and the cartel market continues to collide a bit with crafting skills. I haven't really heard any complaints about crafting, so other people might have different issues. One wide variety of amazing looking cartel market gear is crafted ones, so that's sort of useless for crafters. Adaptive and bind of legacy gear makes crafted oranges sort of obsolete. Easily available 78 gear makes crafted 72s less and less pertinent. 75 mods can't be crafted at all, and I actually agree with that. I don't think 75 mods should be crafted at all. And this is something that I think with the crafting system. I don't think the crafting system should allow you to craft statted gear really at all. I think the crafting system should be customization and peripheral things, like your adrenals, like your stims, like your red packs, like your grenades, things like that. So you either make those, or I think you should make shells and augments. Those should be the areas in which you get into crafting. Because when you get into the other stuff, then you end up in a tug of war between making it too easy to get endgame stuff and making crafters annoyed that they can't craft the endgame stuff. So I feel like there should just be a wall there that says, hey, you can't craft statted gear, you're crafting for appearance, and you could craft for leveling statted gear. So say you can craft up to level 54 level stuff, but 55 stuff with stats is uncraftable. And I think that would be a good way to kind of make players feel less bad about not being able to craft the endgame stuff, because we won't be able to craft statted stuff at all. Now the level 10 cartel market crystals, like I said before, makes the crafted ones relatively useless. And non-reputation dyes available to artifice are ugly, color variety should be expanded. I don't necessarily think they're ugly, but I definitely think they need to be expanded. And one of the unique things about crafting, and artifice specifically, is that the dyes that they do have access to are single color dyes, which you can't get anywhere else actually. So I would like to see them expand out the single color dyes so that artifice can do more of that. Because right now you can get orange and blue. I think there's 2 colors that you can get single color dyes for, main slot and off slot. And I think if they expanded that, it would be a whole bunch of colors that you can add, and that would help out artifice a lot. Maybe you spread them out to other professions, maybe you help them out with something else. But I think that dyes are an interesting thing that you could add to crafting. And I think if you leave crafting to customization, you see the cartel market is all about customization and how well that does. If you just make the crafting in the game about customization, I think a lot of players would enjoy it. Another thing that is a common complaint is that the Galactic Starfighter items can't be crafted at all. And I think now that players are in the game, they see this a little bit less, but there really are no items related to Galactic Starfighter for players to craft. So I don't understand what players really want. Do you want to be able to craft boosts and stuff? That's never been allowed before anywhere else. Maybe that's an interesting way to go, but I really don't see that happening. And I really don't see a problem with the Galactic Starfighter items that people keep talking about don't exist through crafting. I think it is I just don't think it would work as Galactic Starfighter functions. And finally, I'm going to go read something which is very interesting and probably my favorite response from... Where is it? Here it is. This is from The Recreator, and he says, here's an off-the-cuff idea. Cartel schematics for armor shells and other vanity items. One of the biggest complaints I see is between the cartel market and the collection system. No one has any need for more mundane crafted vanity items. If the devs want to release 1 or 2 schematic sets every shipment though, it would create an incentive to use the more aesthetic crafting skills for something besides augments, because that is basically what you pick the other crafting skills for if you're not going to pick bio or cybertech. As a bonus, it would put the in-game economy back in the hands of the players who are dedicated enough to level the relevant crafting skills. On the other hand, perhaps these schematics are better off as standalone purchases. And now this is something that I think is very interesting, and I do think is the way of the future. And what do I mean by that? Well, stick around because I'm going to take a quick break here. You'll have a little music, and I will be back to talk about my second post that I made on Reddit. And this was the questionnaire for the community, and how they would feel about very specific situations that I think could fix the crafting system in SWTOR. So after the 51 responses to the other thread, I decided to ask a few very specific questions because I was interested to see how the community would react to some of my ideas for how the crafting system could be improved. Now, on the other thread, I was very surprised by how many people said that their biggest problems with the crafting system right now is the UI and the fact that you can't search for things, you can't hide things. And I think this may be a symptom of the fact that most crafting systems in MMOs are very similar to SWTOR, so most people are conditioned to be okay with a system like that. I wish it was better, but honestly, I'm sort of okay with this system too. But I'm always open to improvement, so that's why I'm discussing this. Also brought up in the other thread was the fact that EVE is an MMO that has a much better economy, so how can you say that MMOs in general have broken economies and broken crafting systems? And to that, I would say that EVE is a very special and different beast in the fact that the economy is so player-driven and scarcity is also player-driven. You know, you could have a corporation artificially inflate the price of a certain ore by destroying another corporation's mining resources in 0sec. And then that increases the price of a certain resource, which increases the price of stuff made by that resource, and that's all player-driven. That is so much different than anything in games like WoW or SWTOR, where you just go to a mining node, click, 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 click. Oh, look, I have this stuff in my inventory. Or you just send your companion out on a crafting mission. So don't come back to me and say, well, EVE works, so that's an MMO. What? I don't care. EVE plays by its own rules, has its own rules, and players that like EVE are a special bunch. And good for you if you're a top corp rep in a EVE corporation. But anyway, so my first question in this second thread, my crafting follow-up questionnaire, was if the crafting UI and any convenience issues you've had with crafting were addressed, would you be satisfied with crafting in its current form? Now this includes everything from legacy bank to hiding recipes to searching. I got 11 responses to this, and actually I was surprised for the most part. Players said that for the most part they would be satisfied, although there were some dissent, obviously. You know, players have different and varying opinions, so let's read a couple. So Devancian says to the UI changes, I don't mind the UI really, I wish it was a bit more user-friendly. Personally, I wish BioWare would take a page from ArenaNet, making crafting mats have their own storage so you don't have to worry about space. Also, filter via level might be nice, so things like that would be helpful, but this person doesn't really care. On the other hand, we have a Metal Dragon, and he says, mostly, I still think there is an opportunity to improve some crew skills to increase their relevance in endgame. So I could definitely see that one. Here we go, Teslock, he says, I would not be satisfied with crafting. Various skills are still terribly imbalanced. Aside from augments, there is no reason to have armor mech synth weaving, for example. Additionally, the imbalance in gathering mission skills as related to crafting is a source of frustration. For example, Underworld Trading feeds materials to 3 crafts, Cybertech, Armor Mech, and Synth Weaving. Investigation, Treasure Hunting, and Bioanalysis feed materials to 1 craft, and luxury fabrics are still useless. They only seem to be used for blue-purple, non-moddable armor schematics. So that is definitely something that is wrong inherently with the system. It's set up really strangely in that way, where the one mission skill does feed multiple other crafting skills, which is not a great place to be. Moving down here, Disco Geek says, I think it needs a big overhaul. It's not unusable, and it's no better or worse than lots of other MMOs out there. But the sort is really worthless, the list's too long, things other people have already addressed bug me too. I'd love some more pleasing to the eye. I'd love something more pleasing to the eye, including some graphics, background images, and maybe a preview of the armor and weapons, colors and dyes. And who really reads through the diplomacy quest write-ups even the first time? I don't think updating the UI will fix crafting, although it'll make me more likely to use it. So, and then finally at the bottom here we have Char L, who says yes, most likely, to the answer to the question. So there's varying opinions on the crafting, but I think in general this is a unanimous place where they can improve very small things, just allow us to search like the GTN, just allow us to sort a little better, and that would cause improvements by leaps and bounds. A lot of players pretty much universally would want this, and the amount of improvement you get in players' eyes ranges from, yes, I would like it, but there are other things that are wrong, to, yes, this would completely fix the problem for me. So, if they could go along and just fix the UI, it would be a great thing for the crafting system. Number 2. I asked, would you pay for a mobile app that allowed you to do crafting missions? If so, how much? Now, this is a big point of contention. I personally am against allowing a mobile GTN because I think that gives players who spend extra money an unfair advantage in the economy. But I think that allowing them to do crafting missions, not forcing players to log into the game every 10 minutes and giving the players that do have access to the game at all hours of the day an unfair advantage over players who have to work, a job where you can't get SWTOR on your computer, but maybe you can get on your phone and, under the desk, just type in on your phone what crafting missions you want to send them out on, and bam, you're right back in the game. So to this one, we have a bevy of answers as well. The range of what people would play for it ranged from not at all, the players who didn't want to see it and didn't care about it, they said they wouldn't pay for it, but of the players that said they'd pay for it, it seemed like $2 was the most players, the lowest, the most, if that makes sense, players would be willing to pay for it, and there were players that were willing to pay for it up to $10 at the high end. So there's definitely money to be made there, Bioware, but I think with this, it really does come down to a cost-benefit analysis. We know Bioware was hiring players for a mobile development platform. We don't know what that meant. Were they taking care of the authenticator maybe? Were they developing a mobile armory? But I think if you had a mobile armory tied in with allowing your crew skills to be sent out while you were at the doctor's office, I think players would spend money on it, but would enough players spend money on it? Like I said, I would say it was like 75-25 players wanting to get a mobile crafting app versus players who didn't want to get a mobile crafting app and wouldn't pay for it. And if, say, they did make it $2 so that all those players would buy it, that really isn't all that much money, considering they have to develop something wholly new that interfaces with the game. I'm sure that would cost a lot of money, and the money that they would be getting in, if it's a one-time purchase of $2 and say 1 million people did it, that is $2 million, but that's $2 million that you have to set up a system from scratch beforehand, hoping that you'll get the return on investment who knows how long down the future. I don't know if they're already working on it, but if they're not, I would guess it would take maybe a year to get it in the game. So it's a long-term investment into the game. I don't know if it's something that they necessarily care to do. I know they've talked about it, and they've kind of given lukewarm responses whenever I've seen them talk about it. So who knows if we'll see this anytime soon. I would personally pay probably in the $2 to $5 range for it. I pay $5 probably at most. So they would definitely get my money. And if I think they can get $5 for everyone, I think that would be a big improvement. I think $5 might be the minimum, and I'm just guessing here. But if they can get 1 million people to buy it at $5, they'd be all over it. And also getting that 1 million people I don't think is going to be easily said. A lot of people will say they would buy something, but wouldn't. You'd have to think a lot of the free-to players probably wouldn't care. So maybe they're closer to an install base of maybe 200 to 500,000. Because that's closer to the subscriber numbers. So if you're in that territory, you better be making more than $2. So I think that's where we are on the mobile app for crafting. Crafting 3 is, what is a crafting perk that, if added to Armor Mech, Arms Tech, Synthweaving, or Artifice, would make you consider switching professions, without making you feel obligated to. So a problem with crafting that we discussed was the fact that not every crafting profession is made equally. The biochems and the cybertechs of the world pretty much rule the utility, while the people who make augments kind of rule the money making. And how could we make that more interesting? When everything is related to money, then it's not really all that compelling. Money is just an in-game means to acquire things that you use in-game. Why not give your crafting professions a little bit more of a boost in the cool factor and the utility factor? I know in WoW, if you were a jewel crafter like I was, you got the very special jewels. If you were an engineer, which was the useless profession, you got these cool enchants for your boots and your gloves that did cool, unique things and actually helped you in combat. Now, I think staying away from the super OP things is a dangerous thing, because you don't want to have obligated professions for players, but I do think that if you add more utility, just like the reusable stims, the reusable med packs, the special grenades that you get for cybertech, if you add to your utility, you could remove some of the annoyance. So what if you could have a reusable augmentation kit, maybe? Or you got a special bind on pickup augmentation kit that only required 5 augmentations components to make? Or what if for the synth weaving, as we discussed before, you could get special dyes that only a synth weaver could have? You could get special armor that only an armor mech could have. Maybe you would have the Keldragon-esque effects on it. Things like that I think would be very cool and very interesting. And moving right along to the last question, this is where I think a lot of players might see a problem with a system like making unique looking armor and unique looking and unique looking crystals and stuff like that. Crystals, I think, are the worst, because who the hell uses an artifice crystal anymore? You can just buy them in the GTN. Even the cartel market crystals are like 10k for the cheap ones in the GTN. So the crafting of crystals other than the magenta, which is cool, and I think it would be cool if they added other, special crafting missions like that. But in the end, I think the more insidious way players look at BioWare right now is the fact that the cartel market is leeching off of the crafting system in general, and the fact that anything cool looking goes right to the cartel market. And I think for the most part this is true. I think some of the endgame sets do look really cool. But I also see that cartel market stuff does look really cool and unique, and the crafting system isn't getting updated anywhere in the stratosphere where the cartel market gets updated, where the crafting system gets updated. So I could see where players could have a problem with that, and this is where I think D-Creator from the last segment has a great point about allowing BioWare to sell schematics for cartel market items. And I think there are 3 ways to do it. And in my 4th question, I asked, would you be okay with BioWare selling schematics for cartel market items? If so, rank the following methods from favorite to least favorite method. Method A, selling recipes at very high or super rare. Selling recipes at very high cartel coin prices, or as super rare drops from cartel packs, but with mats found solely in-game. Selling recipes at a moderate price, but with mats either purchased from the cartel market or from very rare gathering nodes. So you can't just crucible grind them, you actually have to go through the world and find them, kind of like the magenta crystal things. And then C, selling recipes at a low price, but requiring a purchase of cartel market material. So the cost of one would be slightly more than just buying the set, but over time, just buying the items, so the second would cost less, the third would cost even less, etc., etc. So personally, I think the best way to do it is a combination of all of these. You can have the super rare recipes in your cartel packs or at super high prices. That could be your $30 item. And I think that's also a cool way to recycle the old gear instead of just bringing back the old cartel pack shipments that I know a lot of people are upset about and annoyed with, but other players like it because they didn't get a chance to buy them. Instead of doing that, maybe you could have the Revan Mask recipe as a super rare drop, even rarer than the Revan Mask was before, drop in the new cartel packs, and allow players to craft it but in a very difficult manner. I think that if you're going to be selling recipes for things that dropped in cartel packs, I think you should make it a little bit more annoying to craft it, because players did work so hard to get it. So maybe it's a super rare drop and you have to purchase an item off the cartel market to craft one. But I think that for just the armor sets that are up there, like there's like 5 pages I think of just special cartel market gear. I think you could also sell the recipes for those and maybe have them only be craftable with in-game stuff, so you don't have to buy cartel market items in addition to purchasing the set. And maybe have some new rare items that you need to find in-game, just like the magenta stuff, just like the Orchid egg, that are required to craft it, so it's still kind of rare, and still keep the integrity of the cartel market items, so players either want to buy it because it's too annoying to craft, or crafters are selling it at a very high price. So I'm a big realist here. I know BioWare wants to make its money on cartel market items, but I also want crafting to have its niche and a way to craft more cool things. So I think that's kind of a middle ground. Buying the recipes, maybe keeping some of the recipes locked by a cartel market item that's required to craft it, and maybe having the lesser sets locked into just in-game items, but you have to find rare stuff, kind of like the magenta crystal. Because nowadays, a lot of people have the magenta crystal. It was less so back then. So I know, as I was talking about with scarcity, as the system is out there longer and longer, there are more and more of the item. But I also think with the cheaper, lesser known cartel market sets, I think it's okay to have crafters over time being able to craft it pretty much easier than just purchasing it for the cartel market, from the cartel market, because the prices are so low on them anyway. I don't see this as a big deal. If you're selling your crafted item for 300k because it has a rare in-game item in it, that's pretty much commensurate with just purchasing it off the cartel market. So I know that was a little rambly, but it's such a big and complex system, and I have so many ideas for it that it is kind of ranty and rambly. So I hope you can kind of make out what you think. If you would like to add to the discussion, I would be more than happy to discuss it more in the comments to this episode, so feel free to comment either on my new website, gadgetgaming.com, or on the SWTOR subreddit where I post this, or you can leave a comment on iTunes discussing what you think and what you thought of the show. So I kind of lied when I said I was going to talk about the Life Day event and the wowification of SWTOR. I know that was a terrible tease for me to be changing now, but I've decided that I want to give Life Day a chance. I will play it this week and we'll talk about it next week, about how I'm not super happy about the silliness involved with what it sounds like. It sounds like you throw snowballs and magically you get presents. And personally, I like my SWTOR a little bit more serious, and that's what kind of makes SWTOR stand out from a game like WoW, is the fact that it does kind of take itself seriously. It has its sarcastic moments, it does have its funny moments, but a lot of times it's in service of the story, and it does make sense. It's not outwardly silly, it's just silly as in, no, we're fine here, how are you? Like, that's funny while being in a serious situation, throwing snowballs at each other and making magical presents pop up, and there are a few other examples that I'll talk about next week when I discuss this more in depth, but I'm going to leave it till next week and allow you to write in. Do you have any problem with the Life Day event? Please let me know, gadekteague.crr@gmail.com, or tweet me at gteague and let me know if you have any problems with the Life Day event. Do you prefer SWTOR to be more on the serious side, or are you okay with them adding something more silly and more funny? So please let me know on that. And with that, we will be talking about my Wall of Crazy topic this week, so I will hit the music.
What? That's impossible even for a computer.
It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my T16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters. And my Wall of Crazy topic this week comes from Dan O'Brien at DSanOB on Twitter. He says, I'd love to see more machinima tools for people that want to make in-game SWTOR movies. Better camera control, more emotes, etc., etc. And I think this is a very cool idea. SWTOR actually has a surprisingly low representation on YouTube. For the size of the game is large, and there is a very sizable player base, but you don't really see much of it on YouTube at all. I try to make YouTube videos when I can, when there's stuff in the PTS to look at, when I find something cool and creative I can do. But I know there are players out there more creative than... Why is this such a tongue twister? I've tried it like 6 times and I can't get the sentence out. I know there are players out there more creative than I that would like tools to make cool machinima, and I think SWTOR lends itself well to player-made content, player-made stories. I think there are a lot of cool settings, and if players had better tools to do this, I think we'd see more of it on YouTube and more interesting stuff. I know players out there can write good stories. There is some good fan fiction out there, and I know fan fiction does get a bad rap because most of it is crap. Let's be honest, most fan fiction is the lowest form of writing that exists. But there are occasional diamonds in the rough, and I feel like machinima is in a very similar situation. 99% of it is crap, but that 1% is actually very enjoyable and definitely worth the investment of giving players the ability to be more creative with the game. So if they could put it in, I think it would be a very cool idea. Do I think it will happen? Probably not, but it goes in the Wall of Crazy anyway because it's a good idea. But it goes in the Wall of Crazy anyway because I like the idea. And with that, we will end the show. As always, if you'd like to contact me, you can send your questions, comments, and concerns to gadicteague.crr@gmail.com, or you can tweet them to @gteague on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes to get your weekly podcast updates. If you're new to the game or thinking of resubscribing, I provided my refer a friend link in the show notes, so feel free to use that if you'd like a little added incentive to come back. You can also check out my website, gatagaming.com, where I'm also covering SWTOR, as well as I've started covering Hex, the online card game. It's an alpha, and it's a lot of fun. I like it a lot, so if you'd like to check that out, if you're a fan of TCGs at all, feel free to check out gatagaming.com for my videos on that. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast. This is JD, signing off.